Hello, everyone, and welcome to our online info session for mindfulness courses at Ashton College. My name is Lindsay, and I'm from the Marketing Communications team. There are lots of ways to engage with us during this session, and we love to hear your questions. On Zoom, you can use the chat box, Q&A box, or the raise the hand function. If you are tuning in on Facebook Live, leave us a comment, and we will answer the questions when we get to the Q&A shortly. If you're watching this video on YouTube afterwards, you can leave us a comment, send us an email, or give us a call. Our email is ceinfo@ashtoncollege.ca, or you can give us a call at 604-899-0803, or toll free at 1-866-759-6006. So before we get started, I just want to share the dates and costs of the courses with everyone. Currently, we have 2 mindfulness courses. The first is an 8-hour intro to mindfulness course, and the registration fee for this course is $265. And the current start date is March 8th, and there's a weekly 2-hour live webinar during that time. The second course, which Külli Yee is one of the instructors for, is more in depth and is around approximately 30 hours depending on the instructor. And the registration fee for this course is $595, and classes start April 26th with approximately 3 hours of live webinars a week. All this information can be found on the course web pages that we will put into the Zoom chat, and we'll also list it in the description box below for YouTube. And now, after all that, on to the questions. So Külli, could you share with us a little bit about your career experience and educational background?
Yes, so thank you, Lindsay, for having me here and talking a little bit about this program. So a few words about me. I have worked in the financial services sector for close to 20 years. And for the past 5 years, I've had the opportunity to lead a grassroots level mindfulness program in the workplace. I was trained as a workplace mindfulness facilitator in 2016, and I've led mindfulness sessions and workshops in the workplace since then. And then to further my education and skills in delivering mindfulness training, I took graduate certificate in mindfulness-based teaching and learning at the University of the Fraser Valley, and then at the same time obtained my mindfulness-based stress reduction instructor certification through the Center for Mindfulness Studies in Toronto. So this is allowing me now to develop mindfulness curriculums for different settings and populations, and also to teach the MBSR program for individuals and groups.
Awesome, thank you. That's quite a background. I like how you started in finance. It's very interesting, actually. So how is this course beneficial for students? Or whichever course you would like to talk about, mindfulness in general.
Well, we know that students are experiencing stress at growing rates. They might be juggling course loads and working at the same time, financial pressures, maybe worry about grades, lack of sleep, maybe high expectations that are placed on them. So in the midst of all this, it can be really hard for students to slow down and to attend to their needs. And we know that chronic ongoing stress can lead to a variety of mental and physical issues. So in addition to focusing on time management and being organized and fitting in social time, which is all good, it can be really helpful for students to learn mindfulness practices that have been shown to calm the mind and the body and bring awareness to coping strategies that are most needed at the time for a student.
Perfect. So can you tell me the general structure of the course that you'll be teaching, the more in-depth one, and maybe some of the main topics that are covered?
Yes, so as you mentioned earlier, the MBSR course has 8 weekly classes, and each class is 2.5 hours long. Prior to the first class, students are also required to attend an orientation session where We go over the guidelines for participation, risks and benefits to meditation practice, and just overall setting an atmosphere of trust and non-judgmental awareness of each other in the group. Between classes 6 and 7, there is a 4-hour silent retreat, which is not completely silent because it does have guided meditation practices, but it also has prolonged times for the students to engage in mindfulness practices on their own. And this is a time for the students to really integrate the learning that they have done over the previous weeks. So here's some of the main topics that we cover over those 8 weeks. We talk about what mindfulness is and what it is not. Moving from doing mode to being mode and starting to explore all of our senses. Exploring our perception and creative responding. So discovering how our perception of ourselves and our world is shaping our sense of reality. We will investigate the pleasure and power of being in the present and allowing for the richness of non-doing and understanding how the breath and all of our senses can be used as an anchor to the present moment. We will have a discussion about stress and stress reactivity and the role that mindfulness plays in responding versus reacting to stress. We will explore interpersonal communication, so increasing our awareness of how we communicate under difficulty and how we can develop perspective taking in the face of difficult communications and situations. And we will see how we can apply mindfulness to everyday self-care. So we'll consider what diets we are living on, from social media to technology, our environment, and even our food, and how much control we can exercise over choosing our exposure to these things. And then, of course, in our last session, we will take a look into the future, and each student will take some time to consider what their short and long-term goals are in terms of continuing on the path of self-care and building awareness.
Wow, that sounds so beautiful. Wow. Oh, that was so nice. I didn't know that much about the one that you're teaching, the stress-based one. And wow, that sounds like something we all could use.
There's a
And
lot there, yeah.
yeah, and I'm very intrigued about how you do an interview beforehand to make sure everyone is okay going forward. Like that's something that's really interesting as well.
Yes.
So could you describe your teaching style a little bit?
Yeah, so as a mindfulness instructor, I try to embody the same qualities of the mind and body that I'm inspiring my students to have. And I engage in the same mindfulness practices that the students are asked to do during the program. And this really helps me to be on the same wavelength with them. It's important for me to create an accepting, non-judgmental and inclusive group experience for everyone so that there is space for each student to show up fully as they are and being heard and being seen. And some of the home practices can be challenging in the sense of finding time to do them. So I try to offer as much support and understanding as possible to make sure that this ends up being a stress reduction course instead of added stress from taking a program.
Definitely. And when you mention mindfulness practices, you're talking more than just meditation. There's more to it than that, right?
Correct. There's formal mindfulness practices, which is meditation, and then
Okay.
informal practices, which is everyday mindfulness that the students are also invited and instructed to engage in.
Wow. So, what are your expectations of the students who enroll in the course? How much time will they be spending on assignments or on their practice and outside of class and reviewing other materials as well? How much time outside?
Yeah, so it's really important for the students to attend every class, as the mindfulness practices and the group discussions are very experiential, and one will not get the same benefit from watching a recording on their own. This course is different from other types of courses in the sense that there's no taking notes or absorbing information the same way. Students are engaged in mindfulness practices and discussions and being fully present with themselves and with the group. And then at home, students are expected to spend about 30 to 45 minutes each day, 6 days a week, for both formal and informal mindfulness practices. So, some meditation practices, and also bringing mindful attention to their daily activities and meals, and also keeping a log or a journal of their experiences. And there may be some additional reading materials or videos, but those will be mostly optional for those who want to delve a little deeper.
Awesome. What do you think students will like the most about this course?
Well, firstly, perhaps the fact that this course is a bit different. By taking this course, the students are truly committing an act of self-care. They will have dedicated time to check in with themselves and to discover their emotional and physical needs, and how they are currently responding to those needs. And then from there, they will have a choice of how to modify their responses, and they can choose what self-care strategies best suit or are most needed for them. And the MBSR program is often a first step towards a lifelong journey that people embark on. And it's been shown that the insights gained from this program often will continue to mature and develop years after completing it.
Awesome. So it's basically the practices that you are doing during the course, you're not going to stop once you're finished the course. You're going to continue and grow and make the practice suit you and fit you and how your life is, right?
Yes,
Lo-
exactly. As
Love that.
people might take from this course the practices that are most suitable for them and fit into their lifestyle, but they are set up with knowing how to practice and which practices to choose.
Beautiful. What kind of job opportunities are available for students who specialize in this kind of mindfulness subject matter?
Well, the field of mindfulness has certainly grown in the last decade, and mindfulness programs have found their way into organizations and business settings, healthcare, schools, and even in the government. So the first step on the path of becoming a mindfulness facilitator or a teacher is to develop a solid mindfulness practice yourself and participating in mindfulness practices and classes and retreats. And then taking this personal MBSR course is now considered to be a good starting point if one is interested in studying to become a mindfulness teacher. And then following that, there are many different training programs, both at universities and private organizations that offer mindfulness instructor training. And from there, the job opportunities really vary from being a mindfulness instructor at organizations or working in a community setting.
What kind of businesses or organizations are you finding want someone who has a mindfulness background or wanting to bring that into the workplace?
I think in the business world, it really depends on the organization. I've seen organizations coming from all different sectors, but it really depends on the organizational culture and at what level they are in accepting, which this is a fairly new and kind of an open-minded practice of bringing that into their organization.
For a long time, a lot of businesses are bringing yoga at lunch into the workplace. So this is kind of just the next step of getting more internal about it instead of just the physical of doing yoga. So
Yes, you're right. More of a psychological, mental aspect. Yes.
awesome. So what does success look like in this course, and how can students help themselves to succeed in this course?
Yeah, so the success or the emphasis in this course is on the active engagement of the student. And the students are invited to let go of the notion of achieving anything or holding on too firmly to an expectation, even though this might seem counterintuitive. But this allows room for investigating their experience with openness and curiosity, and also a sense of healthy questioning for whatever is showing up. And the insights and the answers will emerge from the students themselves rather than from the teacher telling them what may or may not happen. And in order to do the home practices, the students may need to talk to family members to arrange for a private space and time and consider how this might best fit in into their lives.
I love that. That's awesome. I'm going to ask one more. Do you want more question before I go into the Q&A? So any of the attendees watching, if you have a question or you think you might have a question, I give you this opportunity to take a few minutes as I ask my question to think of what your question is. You can put it in the chat box, you can put it in the Q&A box, or you can use the raise the hand function. But I will get to any questions really quickly. Before I get there, I'm going to ask the question of, I know it's a relatively new industry, but how has the industry changed during your years of experience?
So I've been involved in this field of mindfulness only for about 6 years. So I don't have as much insight to offer compared to many of my own teachers who have been in this field for 30, 40 years. Uh,
Wow.
yes. However, in these short 6 years, I have noticed changes. Most people have now heard about mindfulness and perhaps have even tried it in one way or another. So it's not so much a conversation anymore. Mindfulness, what's that? Most people have heard of that. And the use of mindfulness apps has really grown over the past 5 years, and the interest of having mindfulness programs in the workplace and in the educational setting has also really grown. But we are seeing a lot of misinformation and misconceptions about what mindfulness is. And I see one of my jobs to be educating people to understand the practice of mindfulness and the benefits from it.
I completely agree. There is so much misinformation about there. So it's definitely, I love that we are now offering a course like this to spread the correct and the science-based information. So it's really exciting. So I do want to say, oh, I do say that we do have a question in the chat box. I am going to ask you it. So let's see. Oh, I love this question. Do you have any apps that you would recommend for meditation, or should I try guided or non-guided meditation when I start out, or any recommendations for a beginner?
Yeah, so what I see these days is that when most people think about starting with mindfulness practice, they turn to apps because that's really the most accessible. So first of all, to name a few that are kind of biggest and well known, my favorite of all time has been Insight Timer. But you have probably also heard of Headspace and Calm. So these are really well known. They all have a different structure. It might be kind of a step-by-step progression, or in Insight Timer, you really just kind of pick the practice that you want to do, but you might not necessarily know which practice to go to if you don't have any guidance. So this is where the conversation always comes in, that it is good to work with a mindfulness instructor, or do a program where you kind of get introduction to what types of practices there are, and when is it good to do certain types of practices, and what are the different benefits. Yeah.
Yeah, I have Calm. I downloaded that and I wanted to get meditation a couple times, like 3 times a week, just to start out, not give myself the pressure of every day. But I find I can't figure out what time of day seems to work. I think evening makes sense, but then I'm not wanting to do in the evening. It's been very interesting trying to figure out something as simple as what time of the day should I sit down and do this?
Yes, it's a very good point, and that happens to many people, that question. And one of the things is just kind of figuring out over time what works best for you. But again, these questions come up, in the group, and kind of helping you to figure out over the course of the program of how this best fits into your life, and what time you might be most awake and alert to do mindfulness practice, or when are you maybe just doing it because you're trying to go to sleep and relax.
I feel like that's a lot of what our society is focusing on and making us relax and fall asleep. But there definitely is a more active, engaging form of meditation. So I love that you mentioned that. That's not just to
That's
relax.
that's an excellent point, Lindsay. Yes.
Awesome. We have another question from the audience. So, does mindfulness always require effort? Does it ever become automatic with time or with practice?
Good question. In fact, we invite to approach the practice effortlessly.
Hmm.
However, yes, of course, there is effort, especially at first. Um, and that's why we kind of look at the different attitudes we want to bring to our practice. Is intention is one of them. What is our intention of coming to this practice? And then attention, where do we want to keep our attention? What is our focus of attention? And then attitude, what is our attitude, how we are staying in this practice, and attitude towards ourselves and that practice. So yes, that effort, that is something that there is always a certain level of effort, but you are invited to, even as I mentioned for this program, to approach it with not too many expectations or goals. And the invitation is for you to simply rest in the moment. And this is something that we certainly go over during the program, almost in every class.
I've definitely heard of bringing what's your intention, but I haven't heard about attention or your attitude. And even the idea of what your intention is such a hard question as well to even figure out what that means. So yeah, that'd be something to dive into. That'd be so great to know really what does that mean for you? Because that
Yeah,
could even be like, I just want to relax for 10 minutes. I want to learn something about myself. Like there's so much to it.
exactly.
I have another question for you. Are these courses similar to cognitive behavior therapy or reframing thoughts?
So mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, is slightly different from MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, where, like it says, the emphasis is more on cognitive reframing, like you said. And in the mindfulness-based stress reduction, we are mostly invited to explore our present experience when it comes to the body, the sensations, how the emotions, feelings, sensations show up in the body, what our reactions, which are often habitual, conditioned reactions, what they are, recognizing them, and then seeing how it is possible to bring mindfulness into it and modify those reactions that might be maybe healthier, more skillful ways of taking care of ourselves.
I love that. I did yoga training many years ago, and I remember when we talked about communication and meditation, we t- she always mentioned that what's in the thoughts that are crossing our mind are just stories we're telling ourselves. So anything that's negative, it's not personal. It's just a story we're telling ourselves, and we can change that story. So I don't know if that also is kind of where mindfulness that they teach that in your training that you did, but I just remember that specifically is like, yeah, we can change. It's just a story. We can change it. It's not true.
Yes, yes.
Awesome. So I'll keep on looking at the Zoom chat. So if there's any more questions, I do have one more question on my list to ask Külli. So if there's any questions from the audience, please just put in the Zoom chat again. But the last question, it's the fun open question where you can really speak your mind is, do you have any final words of advice or thoughts to share?
Yeah, what I'd like to say is that developing our capacity to be mindful can directly affect our well being, our feelings of connectedness to others, and uh, it can improve our overall life satisfaction. Um, I'd like to say that mindfulness is not just a technique or another thing that gets added to our already full to-do list. And the MBSR program aims to help participants to integrate mindfulness into all aspects of their everyday lives and to become aware of their habitual and automatic reactions to stressful situations. And then this allows a choice for more effective and skillful responses to the demands of our everyday lives. And mindfulness is a way of life, and it can be a lifelong journey of discovery. So, because the learning doesn't stop, there is always something new that emerges in our experience if we just stay open and curious to it.
Beautiful. That was a great note to end on. Curiosity is something we all should keep and have. It's a child thing that everyone starts with and something we
Yeah.
should keep from our inner child. Curiosity. I love it. So I see no more questions from the chat. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Külli, for being here and sharing your insights and experience with us today. I feel very honored to have been able to ask you these questions and learn more about mindfulness. And if anyone has any more additional questions, please leave us a comment, send us an email, give us a call, which is 604-899-0803, or visit our website, ashtoncollege.ca. I want to wish everyone a great rest of the week, and thanks for joining.